Oh, you'll hear other. You're gonna hear other King Crimson alumni at that show too, discreetly.
What do you mean?
Don't ask me what that means. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I was going to say, what the heck is that?
What does that mean, Bob?
I don't know. I'm going to make it up when I get there. I'm going to figure it out, you know?
Double dotted eighth note question mark.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to improvise. I'm going to improvise it all. That's what, that's the spirit of the Crim, baby. Improvise.
Now, who are some of the people that influenced you to pick up instruments and it's like, I want to play music? I mean, you already mentioned the Beatles.
Michael Hedges. I don't know if anyone, seriously, that name right there. Oh, okay. So on YouTube, there is this thing called fingerstyle percussive guitar. It ain't that. Michael Hedges.
Yeah.
Just go listen to Michael Hedges because he invented it, he yoded it, he perfected it. He invented it. Michael Hedges, Alan Holdsworth, King Crimson, Rush. I could go on.
For me, primarily my mom. My mom played back in the day. She was a rocker. She fronted one of the first, at least locally, female-fronted proto-metal bands, the hard rock bands back in late 70s, early 80s.
Which was?
Name's band called Crank. They were never signed. They were very close to being signed, and that's the story for another time. But I grew up around guitars. I grew up around my mom being in bands, and by osmosis I became a guitar player, and there was nothing she could do about it, so she just caved. And at some point, she's like, yes, you can play my guitar, just clean your hands. Anyway, but primary influence, but like outside of that, probably honestly Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Nice.
Being able to hear him, going to see him live, consummate performer, player, and like he was another one. He pushed the envelope of blues and his ability to play rhythm and lead at the same time while singing. You think of blues as kind of the static sort of thing, but what he was doing was, he's channeling a lot of the giants he stood upon. A lot of Hendrix, a lot of Buddy Guy, a lot of Albert King, all that stuff. And just being able to see what he was doing really motivated me to like take the instrument. In the same token of people like Randy Rhoads and somebody else I grew up on who's a huge influence is El DeMiola. So the discipline with picking.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I'm the opposite. You're like the picking guy. I'm the legato guy.
Yeah.
I just want to give a real quick shout out before we get to Chris. But when you mentioned your mom, my dad is like a huge influence on me, like major song. He was big time songwriter and stuff, but never got signed, never got famous, but still, So anyway, just wanted to give a shout out to old pops.
Yeah, for me it was like there was a point where my parents said, "Okay, you and your brother are getting music lessons," and I picked drums and I stuck with it. And this was like the late 70s, early 80s, so it was a lot of the stuff that was just on rock radio. WNEW out of New York was probably what I listened to a lot of, and at that point you had a lot of like that era of Jefferson Starship when they were before they kind of jumped the shark, and Styx and the Who and even the Kenny Jones era of the Who. But then as a socially inept white kid in the suburbs, I found progressive rock. So I had my Rush moment and yes, and Genesis and King Crimson and all that. And gravitated towards that for the same reasons that all of us socially awkward white kids in the suburbs do. And at that point kind of found my hey, these aren't songs about love. I like that. Let me dig into that. And then as a drummer, it was fulfilling because I was a nerd. And, so that started it. And then it evolves into, you find pathways. So it's like you find Bill Bruford, and Bill Bruford brings you to the Bruford Band with Alan Holdsworth, and Alan Holdsworth brings you to Tony Williams, and Tony Williams brings you to Miles Davis. And you find these pathways into all this great music that just kind of expands the scope between being that little prog rock kid. So I'm glad I was able to kind of expand the palette beyond that, but those are the kinds of things that, but then, I come back and I'll listen to the Beatles and Radiohead and stuff that it's funny. I used to be on Usenet back in the day, and the drumming news groups were all about, Neil Peart versus Ringo Starr. And it's like, and at a point I reached like, this is such a dumb argument. But then you go onto Reddit, and they're still having that argument.
Yeah, now it's John
ridiculous.
Bonham and Neil Peart. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm still having my Rush moment, Coz. Is that wrong?
Hell
Is
yeah.
that wrong?
No, not wrong at all.
It's not wrong at all.
I guess, for me growing up, my dad had a console stereo, and he was also a trumpet player. When he got home from work, he'd take out the trumpet, put on some records. He let me bang on a coffee can along, with him as much as he could take. But Dad had he was a member of one of those record clubs, and so whatever he got, I would just figure out how to play on that console stereo. And according to him, I cost him a fortune in needles because I didn't really know how to do it. I didn't know how to work the turntable, and I would just be gouging out the needle. But ever since then, and I was really little, I was maybe 1 year old, 2 years old maybe, and ever since then, I just had to figure out how it worked, all of it, not just how the record player worked, but how does that sound come out of these speakers, and what goes into the grooves in that sound on this piece of black vinyl or whatever. I was just fascinated by it. So something else is driving that bus, and you just I've just been along for the ride on that bus ever since I'm trying to figure out Dad's console stereo, really.
If you ever want to do a Rush show, I'm in, dude. I am in. 1,000% in.
There's probably a market for it now.
Yeah.
I'm currently working with Matt Tate, who is the point person who got me into this group, with some kids at School of Rock in Oak Park for a Rush show in June.
Oh, yeah? Nice.
It'll happen, and they crush it. It's kind of frightening, really, how good they are.
Yeah, I remember being so bummed that Tributosaurus did Rush, and I was like traveling. I was out of the country. It's like I don't know. I like every drummer I know is probably trying to get in on that gig, but that would have been fun.
Mm.
I was just thinking something that's kind of related to what Steven said is, the thing that kind of like drives you, the thing that inspired you, that started that path. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it makes me think of like what keeps that path going. And for some reason, like the idea of this image of like I ride a bicycle, I go on the bike paths and stuff. And one of the things that drives me is to see the next thing over the horizon. Like I hit that I look forward and I see that a mile ahead, right? And I ride to it, and then I see what's after that, And I'm just gonna keep riding and riding and riding until I get exhausted, but kind of like the way it is with music too. I'm gonna keep playing until I get exhausted. But yeah, that's anyone who has that sort of like vision of like, I want to see what's over the next hill. That's the spirit of King Crimson music. You know what I mean? I want to see what's over the next hill. I want to push until we see what's over the next hill. And what we find could be El Dorado,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed that they didn't record more music with the 2014 to 2021 band.
Yeah.
I mean, they put out that Scarcity of Miracles album
right
a couple of years before they were doing that. And they played a little bit of it at the beginning of the 2014, 2015, but they never actually just let's go in the studio and make an album.
Right.
They just didn't do an album.
I was surprised that they covered 21st Century, because that was like one that they would absolutely refuse to do. They refused to do it for years, and it was like, the total encore, in every show,
Well, I think Robert Fripp, you can kind of trace it back where it's like he, as the shepherd and the steward of the music, he has a very particular notion of when the moment is right for the music and when the music is right for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly with that later period band, he's like, okay, now is the time that we do the repertory.
Yeah,
and he's very good at having a circuitous linguistic path towards whatever answer he tries to give.
Oh my God! Yeah, he'll justify it in the weirdest.
You can ask him.
you try.
Yeah.
That's like Jordan Peterson, like that in a little bit,
And
but not right wing.
To your point, Coz, he was really late in releasing the discography to streaming. He was one of the last people. Remember how tight a hold he held on? No Spotify until when? 2019 or something like that? I don't know the exact date. I'm guessing. Mr. Wizard, do you know?
2021-ish.
Okay.
And it's
It
still
was
coming
late.
out. It's still coming out. He just put out the Andy Summers albums he did with
The two.
which I don't know. Maybe I should go back and revisit them, but I remember when they came out, it was like, eh.
Imagine if you took the, Robert Fripp from 1982 and Andy Summers from 1982 and put them in a studio together without any of the songwriters that made them great. That's it's great.
That's kind of what it sounded like.
It's exactly what it is. I mean, if you like Fripp's playing and Andy Summers playing, you're going to get tons of it, But you're not going to get any songs by Sting, so don't think you're going to get, murder.
It's definitely not the Police.
No.
That's for sure.
But it's to use that art museum thing. You know what I mean? Not everything is McDonald's, man. Sometimes you want a steak, and sometimes you want to go to Gibson's. Save up the money, go to Gibson's, man. That's what Crimson is like to me, man.
Well, I remember seeing Andy Summers. He did an opening gig for Tangerine Dream.
Oh, really?
Of all bands. And it was at 88 in Poplar Creek.
Oh, man.
And when Andy Summers came out, he didn't have a band. He came out and he did like 30 minutes of Frippertronics. And I'm just scratching my head. It's like, why is he doing, obviously it's what he wanted to do, and that's fine. He's enjoying it.
Yeah.
And it came out okay, but, couldn't come up with something maybe. But the thing is, he could come out and do that, and there's a few people in the audience that would know, hey, this guy's just, he's just ripping off Fripp here. But,
Right.
But, I'd say a majority of the crowd was just like, ooh, this is very interesting. I've never heard a guitar sound like that before. So.
I was just thinking of something that Chris said about how, how getting into Crimson sort of like made you go into all those offshoots. I'm thinking right now that Music for Piano and Drums, that the Bruford Mraz albums, those are so great. And that album Flags. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a family tree of King Crimson where there's like 50 people in it, Mm-hmm. So if you want to go down that rabbit hole, there's just tons of great stuff, man.
Yeah, that doesn't even scratch the surface with the Eno connection.
Yes.
Right.
And the Bowie connection.
Evening Star.
Oh my God, dude. Like they invented ambient music.
Yeah.
Right. What are some of the other stuff like all the brew? I love like the one of a kind stuff.
Oh, God,
I love that. Like it's like tattooed on my brain. There's another one, folks. One of a Kind by Bill Bruford. The entire album. Don't skimp. Don't pause. Don't shuffle. Take the 35 to 40 minutes and listen to One of a Kind from beginning to end. You're welcome.
And also, don't forget Bruford and Holdsworth UK.
Absolutely.
The first UK album.
That first UK album is... both UK albums are great for different reasons. But yeah.
Yeah, that first one was...
though. Yeah.
I like the first one a little better. It wasn't as commercial sounding. It wasn't,
That's why Bruford and Holdsworth went off and did Bruford's albums. Yeah. And they got Asia.
Alan Holdsworth.
Oh.
That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
Alan Holdsworth.
Right. The John Coltrane of guitar. Yeah.
They had the late great Holdsworth with that. Some of toward his later years, he had that Tavakran guitar thing.
Syntax.
And it was just
Syntax.
Out of Akron was the album.
Yeah.
And I actually saw him do that with that thing. Played the Park West, and he had it, and it was cool and great and everything.
I almost feel like I'm not a sports guy so much, but I am when I enter an environment like this. I feel kind of like, like one of the sports writers, where we can like pull from in 1978,
Yes.
But
This is your
the
sport.
difference between that and sports is that you could revisit this stuff over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's like having the Mona Lisa in your back pocket and you just pull it out and you go, wow, Da Vinci, That's what it's like,
Well,
No pressure, guys, on Thursday, by the way. No pressure.
Thanks for that.
yeah,
We're recreating a Mona Lisa on stage using splatter paint, our fingers.
That's Jackson Pollock.
Magic mark. Oh, wait a minute.
Are we doing Jackson Pollock?
We're recreating Jackson Pollock.
And we have a
That's a better analogy.
We have a 14-member team, kind of like football.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a good sports
So
analogy.
we have a second line.
Or
and-
possibly cricket. I don't
Or
know,
cricket,
14.
maybe.
I don't know
Yeah.
how many people play cricket.
Interpretive dance is welcomed.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you have 4 drummers.